So, to say simply, I guess I'm going to be calling this podcast Pancake Marathon. Maybe just pancake. I'm still up in the air about it. I'm not really too sure. Yet, I know it's not about what the name is called, it's about the message. You never focus on the messenger, you always focus on the message itself. And so, maybe down the line I'll actually come to it, and yet maybe it always will be called pancake. You know, why? Because you don't know what ingredient of your recovery is gonna keep you active in your recovery. Maybe minus something, and there you go, your whole life becomes unbalanced. And yet, go back to it and your life becomes balanced again. Keep doing what you're doing. That's what it comes down to. If it's a good pancake, well, then why not keep going? You just might need to flip it to not get burnt. So, at this moment, I would like to communicate and utilize this opportunity that I've been given. I've been wanting to begin a podcast in and of itself. I used to do other podcasts, and I might go back into doing those. Yet at this moment in time, this is what I'm doing today. So, hopefully, you find something inspiring, all in reckoning of, well, adding to your recovery time. In and of itself, to say simply. Yet, I'm going to go into more or less the topic of what this podcast moment would be about. So, let's go ahead and see how this goes. So, as this being the topic in and of itself is the serenity prayer. Absolutely. Now, I have been wanting to do a podcast for some time, in and of itself geared towards the theme or whatever it may be as descriptive, of words to sum up what kind of podcast it would be overall. Now, give me just a moment to see if this is still recording. So I'm going to talk about serenity and the serenity prayer in and of itself, to say simply, just how powerful it is. Now, I was going back and forth and, attempting to, what would be the greatest topic to start with, to say simply, right? And yet, today, oh my gosh, I had to do something that, on my own personal interface, we could say, of life itself, ugh, I despise it. It's one moment, it's one thing that I just have to get past. That something inside of me, it just brings up so much balking with absolute earnestness to balk. And I get that it's not healthy. It's not any other than, we could say a trigger. And to me, yes, I don't think triggers don't exist. Well, simply to say, at this moment in my life, I would say triggers would be that of what would be a point to what is a marking of you get to work on yourself. It's a thing to work on yourself at that moment. It's an indication, we can say, just so that we can understand, the concept of, what a trigger is. Once you move past the pain, once you stop using tradition 4 in the adverse nature of itself, tradition 4, let each group, or let it run autonomously except for matters affecting other groups or, the fellowship as a whole, right? Tradition 4. As I see it through tradition 5, each group has one primary purpose to carry its message to those that are still sick and suffering, right? And so through tradition 5, I see tradition 4, to simply say, let's reread it, let it run except for matters affecting or focusing on the hate, the pain, basically, or devaluing something. Okay, so, and, through tradition 5, a group, when we look at tradition 4 and 5 together, a group and a fellowship are not the same thing. And a group outside, of a halfway house in and of itself, a group can be a maximum of 2 participants, right? If it was in a halfway house, their in-house meetings, you probably have to have 3 at least, if not more. Yet, there's reasons for that, don't plagiarize or whatever, keep everybody accountable, right? Yet, in the outside of a halfway house, outside meetings basically, or out of the house meetings, it just has to be 2 to have it be a group. So it could be you and your higher power, right? Somebody you're talking to, right? And so with me and my higher power, because of tradition 5, that's how I can find a peace of mind in as tradition 4 can be in my journey of my recovery program, in of itself, to find unity, right? Because we're all at different points in our recovery, and we're all approaching. Ow! I just bit my lip. It's kind of whoa. Yeah, it's a shocker. What can I say? Yet, so that's why I say triggers don't really exist, right? It just points in a moment in time. So we could say that to give you the ability. I had to take to work on a moment of getting some drink and at the same coffee, since because my sponsor says the exact same thing, completely different things, right? And so basing on if you're using the AA lingo in and of itself, a drink is what we used to do. We used to go to the bar or wherever, right, to get a drink. And, me, and it's like, that's a drink. It's always been a drink. Yet, since it's so written in such a simple way of being able to relate, I super agree that relating is everything to do within recovery. In the every moment, right? It's about promotion rather than attraction, right? Yes, in the very beginning, words absolutely do matter. They always do. Yet, when you get down to the bottom line, just be an active part of your recovery. It doesn't matter if you go to ah or nah or, ga or ka, or in of itself the CMA awards, right? AA, NA, Gamblers Anonymous, right? Or Crystal Meth Anonymous. Okay, all those kind of things, right? Because sometimes you got to go ah, and sometimes you got to go nah, and sometimes you're like, gotta get this time, right? And then sometimes you're like, come on, right? You got to go AA, you got to go NA. Sometimes you got to go to, GA, Gamblers Anonymous, to go and finally maybe reach, when you go and say, come on, Crystal Meth Anonymous, to finally reach, the award system or whatever it would be, this country music awards, right? All funny as a set aside, and so getting back to what I was saying, that through tradition 4, focus on the solution, right? And add value to itself. There are over 220 12-step recovery programs. Absolutely. We could say AA itself, with the big book thumpers back in the day, we're still interpreting, right? Attempting to find their place and their balance and their peace of mind and not let outside issues cloud that judgment. Even though with that worry that they didn't want their judgment to be clouded or have judgment, you know, pretty much in another way of saying, keep all distractions away from the message and the newcomer, right? Super well written and worded in the NA literature. Yet, so we could say AA missed out and killed how many countless people because they didn't want outside issues, and which enabled and allowed NA to be something, right? Yet, going past that point, right? Because you don't want to focus on the pain, it's always about the solution, right? So, it's all about relating. Absolutely. Even though in the big book, alcoholic is just a code word, we could say, of addict, right? And so we could say that, you know, the serenity prayer, the serenity, ultimately, getting back to a peace of mind in and of itself, of yourself, unity, right? That's the ultimate absolute of any 12-step recovery program. Any matter of fact of recovery, right? And so it's always it's always about repair and recovery. It absolutely really is. It's always about repair and recovery. And so I had to pretty much pause because one of my sponsees called. Ironically, to ask about serenity, essentially. They started saying that they were going through something, right? And there's somebody that just has not put the work in, right? And to keep my peace of mind, there's like only so much I can do, right? Yet to keep anonymity from those other parts and to not isolate about this part, about the serenity, right? And they're adamant about at this moment to go ahead and if to talk, reply, or whatever it is to interact when it does not have their name in it. If they were sticking up for somebody else, basically. Yet, I'm super glad that they didn't isolate, right? And that they are seeing their progress, right? And all that kind of stuff. And yet, they still, I've said it before, and they're like, I know you said it, that I don't need to reply, basically, if it doesn't have my name in it. And that's what I said. So, if it doesn't have your name in it, like if it's not a specific question for you, it doesn't involve you. Stay out of it, right? If you don't see a cheetah, if you don't spot the cheetah, then you're not in immediate danger. Okay? And I know myself, I gotta definitely work on that part for exactly what I went through today that inspired this whole entire me actually having the moment or getting to have the moment. Yes, I have the time and all that kind of stuff. Yet this actually gave me the drive to per se do this, to start this podcast, to let this be the first topic in the simplest form to say. And yet overall, you know, so they haven't put the work in the steps and they just started this whole recovery journey, we could say, to actually, being in recovery. Yet, to say simply, there's that part where they have to get to that point, where they realize this. Yet, So that's kind of a, example of serenity, not isolating and going from 40 seconds of focusing on the pain to 39 seconds, right? Seeing your progress, omitting, step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly omit it. I absolutely agree that it doesn't matter what step you're on a piece of paper. It doesn't. You're working the steps no matter what, regardless if you're on whatever step you're on, right? You're always working all the steps, right? It's just so simple. You put that you focus on this part right now, right? They say 24 hours a day. That's for like the gurus, to say simply, of recovery, Yet if you're just starting your journey upon getting your peace of mind back and finding serenity and losing insanity, basically, and forgiving it and letting it go, not judging it anymore, right? Then it comes down to just moment by moment, right? Mind your P's and Q's, pause and quiet, absolutely. So you can give hugs, hope using God, right? So then you can Q-tip it up, quit taking it personal, absolutely, right? And so, then you're not going nuts, not using the steps, right? And so you can push, pray, and something happens, to say simply, right? And so it comes down to that. How do you keep your peace of mind? And it's great. I'm glad that I had the time to actually answer that call, right? Because I'm being so productive, right? That I'm working or I don't have the time. I don't get to have the time. And so I'm glad I answered, right? So it's really comes down to that. I'm so glad. Absolutely. So I guess in a simpler way of saying that it comes down to the simple fact that the serenity prayer is absolutely one of the absolute essential parts of your recovery, right? Because I know that power, that recovery power. We can say it's a superpower, all that kind of stuff. I used to call it that, quote it that, all that kind of stuff. Yet it's just now it's a recovery power because, yeah, it's super when you're using it, and it's a powerful means of getting your peace of mind, keeping your peace of mind, holding true to everything about getting back to yourself, being able to be part of the marathon of your life. And so going to what I was going through, man, and it's not that I was like handling it in a beneficial way or in a way that is good, we could say, right? Because, cussing, absolutely not being well to do in my mouth area, and just excusing myself from my recovery at that point, right? And being a walking excuse with this trigger of, oh my gosh, I have a glass, but I'm not going to fill it, right? Like, to keep it simple, there's a glass and there's water. Go ahead, and it's up to you at that point of how full or empty the glass is going to be and when you're going to refill it. How the saying goes, is the glass half empty or the glass half full? There's just a glass, and you can fill it with whatever liquid you want. Hopefully it's just regular water, what actually is a drink and not a drink, or whatever it may be, what relatability you have to any 12-step recovery program, regardless of how much you want to close the door on the past. You don't close the door on history. You don't close the door unless you're balking, and then you're already in the lapse happenings, your thought process, right? Your stinking thing is kicking in. And so then, are you putting yourself in debt of your physical, your mental / emotional, or your spiritual? Some could say, oh, it's a baseball thing, right? There's 4 points, there's 4 whatever bases, and so there's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual sobriety. Yeah, it's a simple program. Is mental and emotional, is that a physical action? Or does it take place in a spiritual form? Right? So it's really its own thing. And it's really simple. Keep it together. Don't overcomplicate it. Unless, that's what keeps you going, to understand how it all comes together, to say. Yet, there's really just 3 forms of sobriety, to simply say. Physical sobriety, step 1 through 3. And 4 is a blending of your physical and your emotional sobriety. Step 4, right? Step 5 is all about your emotional / mental sobriety. 5 through 8, actually. And step 9 is a blending of, your emotional and your spiritual. Okay, and step 10 through 12 is your spiritual sobriety, right? So that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes we're at step 0 with the part that we now just get to work on. Because, we just now get to work on it. It's all about being unity and all that kind of stuff, right? And so, how do you work on yourself? What tool, what suggestion, what guidance are you going to keep in that moment to hold true to? As that's why I don't think there is advice in recovery. Because what kept you, your ledger of yesterday, of what kept you, what led you to recover, which only happens in the past, right? Based around you doing the next right thing, from the point of what's in front of you, right? Starting where you're at. And that's how you do the next right thing. Okay? That's how you take responsibility and accountability and all that kind of stuff. What's your responsibility? Step 10, continue to take personal inventory. And when wrong, promptly admit it. The moment you realize you're wrong, you promptly admit it when you can, right? Part of your continue to take personal inventory, do you make it as what step 8 is? Make the list of all person harmed, and then that's when that's the amends part for that. Probably you can do both, actually. Then do a step 9 if you actually still are able to see them, right? Make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except to do so would injure them or others, right? Don't add injury to it, right? Don't, so, others read you and all that kind of stuff. Yet simply to say, it's up to you. And so, who do you want to be today? It really is up to you, Thank you very much. Have a great, great day. So, to kind of close out, we could say, to come to a conclusion, or, go on to do something else, be able to keep being an active part of recovery, my recovery. For this podcast was about serenity. Before I left and came back to finish this podcast, I felt that this was where I was at to make this part right here. I felt like I very much touched on and implicated, or what it would be as to give some guidance and suggestions on what is the power of serenity, and, in of itself, a recovery power, as the serenity prayer is overall. So hopefully you find something that I lined up that requires you to keep coming back, not to this podcast per se, yet to a point of just being an active part of your recovery, for it does not matter in and of itself, to say simply, where you find your peace of mind. If you find it in NA today or AA tomorrow, or in and of itself just finding a way to keep on meditating, and praying, right? Meditation is hearing from your higher power. Prayer is communicating to your higher power. You know, so the last thing I want to say on at this moment in this is, there are points where we find ourselves unable to heal from the family curses, or not being able to be parented in the right way. Okay? And yet that's where your higher power really absolutely comes in to a factor into itself. To say simply, they can assist you, help you, guide you, give you the care that you are looking for, so that you can get to a point to where you can have sanity, right? To where you can then, able to be at the same level as a partnership with your higher power, right? For it's an equal unity. It's a spirituality, Yeah, you could say your higher self, your higher power knows everything. Do they? Maybe they do. And yet, same senses, maybe they like to hear you say whatever they already know that you're going to say. Have you ever seen the end of the movie of Serenity? Exactly. They know exactly what was going to be said, yet they like to hear them say it. It's all about the journey, never the destination. It's that simple. It really, really is. If you really are a copy, an image, right? Because that's some of the things that I take from the, theology, to say simply, is that made in the image of. Okay. So it's a copy, essentially. And then some of the things I take from science as having some worth to it. Not that everything teaches you anything, right? Science, spirituality, religion, they don't teach you everything. You got to piece it together yourself. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the effort. You got to put action into getting something, right? You can't wait till somebody comes and saves you, because even if you do, then that means it's all about that destination, never about the journey. And even if you have someone come and save you, bring you to a new destination, you're the problem. And so really, what does it come down to? Put the work into yourself. Don't be like Batman. Be like the Joker. Why so serious? They actually care, right? And so some of the things I take from science is everything's energy, okay, and then energy can't be destroyed, it just changes form. Well, in that sense, it already says that the energy, the form that it was, can't be destroyed. It always is. Okay, so then in that sense, it's just, playing with the whole copy made in the image of, and, so we're all just a rippling continuum in absolute form of whatever level of consciousness that we are, of whatever has already been experiencing itself. How more spiritual can you get? Yet. So, have a great day. Be who you want to be today. Yet, just remember, whatever your ingredients of your sobriety, your recovery, your clean time, whatever you want to say, keep doing it. Maybe, put a little less amount into that pancake, that cookie, whatever you want to call it, and go from there. Absolutely. And then if it starts becoming unbalanced somehow, you're putting yourself in debt of your physical, your emotional, your spiritual sobriety, then go back to doing it all over what you were doing before. Go back to that ingredient. Don't minus the ingredients to make a better cookie, or to make a pancake that can flip higher, right? Is that really the goal? Or is it to be an active part of your recovery and continue with your peace of mind? It's up to you. Who do you want to be today? I know who I want to be, carrying the message of, well, what, as it states, as it can be stated, have a great day. For I'm not even sure how I want to end this. I'm not sure if I want to put my name at this point. I'm just going with the flow. Anonymity, absolutely, right? Yet, I feel like I want to call this pancake dumb or pancandom. Yet, keep it simple, right? So I'm thinking I'm just going to stick to pancake, the podcast, for you to find yourself in moments of, well, you cooking because you're good looking with pancake. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you very much.